Passed away. It's now 13 past 9.
Live from the New Scientist Labs, it's Janine Young with Wammo on Kiwi.
New Scientist Laboratories in Melbourne City. Janine Young, a New Scientist correspondent. Good morning, Janine.
Good morning, Wammo.
Are you planning on living long? That's a strange question, isn't it? Are you planning on living long? Have I got news for you, Janine?
I might duck off next week. No, it would be good if we could. I think most people would like to be able to live a longer life, perhaps than a shorter one. Some might ascribe to the live fast, die young theory.
Yes, that's true. As long as it's a long, healthy life. That's all I ask.
A lot of people would like. And people are starting to realise now that getting to 100, or even over 100, is nowhere near as rare as it used to be. Interesting factoid for the day.
Yes.
By 2030, they're expecting there's going to be about 1 million people who hit 100 in the UK alone.
Goodness gracious me.
Precisely.
That is heaps. That's a lot of letters the Queen has to write.
I know, she's going to be very busy and get the RSI from signing them. But the way that you get to it is what people are interested in, because there's always that kind of, my grandmother is 94 this year. Her mother died at 101 and a half. There is longevity in my family, but we don't know why. And so part of that can actually be, oddly enough, down to your genes. And scientists are trying to work out now which ones and how they work to make you live longer.
Well, we do know that people in the Mediterranean live longer, but we think that's because of diet as opposed to genes.
And diet can actually play an important role. Here comes the boring bit, people. Basically, if you eat properly, if you exercise, if you keep your brain active, if you do all the things that you know you're meant to do, you don't smoke, you don't drink too much, that's really going to help you get a really long way.
Yeah.
But those sorts of factors are only important up until about the age of 60.
Okay.
And after that, that's when your genes start kicking in. And you can fall into any one of a number of groups if you're actually going to get to 100. You can be one of the people that somehow manages to delay chronic disease until after you're 60. So it can be the heart disease and all that sort of stuff that hasn't caused you problems up until that point, and they can start accumulating, but you wait until you're 60. There are those who can actually be suffering chronic diseases but survive to tell the tale. They're actually getting through it, if you like. And then there are those, and I must confess I'm probably not one of them, that manage to escape it altogether. They don't have heart disease, they don't have cancer, no diabetes, no hypertension, and that's about a third of males who hit 100 and about 15% of females.
Okay, so
They're pretty high numbers.
So is there a difference between the sexes when it comes to genes and perhaps lifestyle?
Oh, yes, of course there is. My partner is a case in point on this one. His steadfast refusal to take care of himself is just a constant point of annoyance. But in terms of getting to 100, we know that women will often go to doctors more regularly. They will often drink less, they'll smoke less. In general, women tend to take care of themselves better than men do.
And that's why they live longer?
Partially, yes. But it's also, again, to do with your genes. It could be that the female body is just better able to tolerate chronic illnesses and disabilities. I mean, we do things like going through a period every month, and for some women that's incredibly painful. And they learn to deal with that level of pain and irritation. Men, on the whole, tend to be more healthy, and thus when things hit them, it hits them a lot harder. Hence the standard joke about man flu. They go down and it's if the world is ending simply because they're not used to being ill, so therefore when they do, they respond to it worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to think I'm not falling in that category, but I probably do, yeah.
Well, we love you all anyway, let's put it that way. But as men who actually get to that point, when they hit 100, men are more healthy than women are. It's an interesting kind of switch, and there's a couple of different things that you see quite clearly for people who do make it to 100.
What is that?
That women aren't as healthy.
Okay, right.
But men will be really dodgy getting to it, but once they get to 100, then they're generally more healthy.
Right. And if you've got bad genes, you're generally stuffed.
I don't want to put it quite that
That's true.
But there's going to be natural attrition in any environment anyway, because if you're one of the weaker members of society, then there's a very good chance that you're going to get knocked off anyway. If you're susceptible to respiratory infections, for example, it's very likely that, certainly before modern drugs, you would have gotten knocked off by the time you were, 15.
Yeah, well, that's why the strong survive.
And that's what this does come down to in some respects. There's certain combinations of genes that they're trying to work out what they are. And there's one in particular that if you have 2 copies of it, you're 3 times as likely to get to 100 with better health and fewer problems. So if you're one of the fortunate ones, then you're lucky. If if you have that running in your family, then you do have a better chance.
I suppose there's a test for that, yeah?
There is. You can identify genes, but that one's not going to be readily available.
No, right, okay. Unfortunately.
Sadly, unfortunately. So take care of yourself, and that's going to increase your chances of being able to lead a long, happy and healthy life. We've talked about these sorts of things before. You keep your brain active, and that's going to mean that you don't have as many problems. But don't be thinking that people who get to 100 are universally well. They're not. They invariably have underlying issues like osteoarthritis, cataracts. A lot of them still do live independently, but they're not all sprightly. Some of them are really quite unwell.
General crankiness.
Yes, well, I'm not sure whether or not that's genetic or just something in the air.
And probably less optimism, perhaps, as well.
Well, I suppose once you get to that age, you've seen a lot, and it's very easy to become very jaded.
Yeah. Hey, finally, this next story I find a little bit worrying. It's about wireless aircraft. That is, taking the wires out of aircraft and everything inside the aircraft working wirelessly. How does this happen?
Yeah, it's not yet, rest assured. That makes us all feel much better.
Yeah.
This is more a theory than anything else, because I too am a little nervous by the whole concept of fly-by wireless, because I don't know about your connection, but mine can be a little bit dodgy sometimes.
Exactly, whether it be your cell phone or your Wi-Fi network and stuff, it's not exactly 100% reliable, right?
Yeah, the phrase dropping out could mean something completely different.
Yeah.
What they're actually thinking about, though, is trying to reduce the weight in planes, because for every kilogram you have to cart around, you have to supply fuel for it, and fuel's getting expensive. You have greenhouse gas emissions. It all has knock-on effects. So what they're talking about doing is trying to mount sensors on many more parts of the plane and monitoring them more frequently. At the moment, scheduling in aircraft happens on a very strict schedule according to how long they think a part is going to last.
Right.
But what they'd like to be able to move to is to keep the plane flying until it actually needs attention.
Oh, I don't know about that.
They call it a prognostic approach. And, that if you can monitor it reliably and you do know the state that it's in, that's not to say they won't do routine maintenance anyway, but in actually pulling it apart, they're trying to keep that to a minimum, because if you keep a plane flying, then it's going to be more economically sound.
Oh, yeah, it all comes down to money, yeah?
A lot of the time it does.
It comes down to budget airlines trying to stretch things as much as they can.
You're such a cynic today.
Oh, it's just because budget airlines have come into New Zealand, and I'm a little bit dubious about their schedules of how long they keep aircraft in the year. That's just something that I worry about.
And that could indeed be a legitimate concern. And I must confess, this whole concept of no wires is a little bit concerning, but that's just me. What they're actually looking at, though, and there is a huge research consortium that's involving the aerospace companies and a number of universities in the UK, is to develop the systems that can monitor the engines while they're under development and then provide in-flight monitoring. And they think they can do it if they can make these Wi-Fi systems robust enough.
Yeah, well, that's the key, making those robust enough. And as long as they don't cut corners, it's fine. I'll be fine with the technology as long as there's no corners cut and it's 100%.
Well, in this kind of thing, they would have to, because you're talking about passenger safety here, and money or no money, that's fairly fundamental, and people will not fly on your airline if you're not looking after them.
Well, fascinating and interesting as always.
We do our best.
Thanks very much, Janine.
My pleasure.
Janine Young is our New Scientist correspondent. You'll find those stories in New Scientist magazine.